Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number. I'm going to have to take a little look here. Episode number, I'm going to have to tilt my head. 876 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026, kids and cubs, which means it is, beginning of April. That's always a big deal psychologically. Over here, it is a bit of a rainy day, as one would expect for April. April showers bring May flowers. Right? It's April Fool's Day, of course. I do not have an April Fool's joke for you today. Unfortunately, I was not clever enough to think up of one. And I also remembered that today was April Fool's Day. One day, a little too late to be able to come up with one. However, I heard somewhere that it is also another day here, April 1st. And I, I am not going to say that correlation is causation. However, April 1st also happens to be Danielle Smith's birthday. Oh, there's an expression in French, tout s'explique, which I guess is something like, oh, everything makes so much more sense now. My word. I heard that on a podcast a few days ago, and it was like, oh no, you got to be kidding me. Really? She's born on April Fool's Day? Really? I was like, there's got to be a joke in there somewhere. Jeez. Oh, my word. Okay. We have a little bit of incoming news here. Ontario minimum wage set to rise to $17.95 on October 1st. And then, of course, yes, for those who are into that kind of thing, all major broadcast TV networks will be interrupting their programming to air Trump's address tonight because he's going to, come and tell a story. Story of a land excursion when he didn't know how to get out of. Mm. Boy. Okay. Yes. I think I said today, yeah, April 1st. I got off track there with that, thinking about Daniel Smith. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvin Moon Publishing, and psychictarot.ca. And how's your mental health doing today, kids and cubs? Um, Doing well. Uh, mm, we have a bit of sad news on the show today, so uh, not as bouncy because of the sad news. We lost a pretty great Canadian, but overall doing well. Also, uh, a little bit of relief. That's probably from yesterday because yesterday I went into our curling match thinking that it was the first round of playoffs for our men's competitive team, and we did not have a good night. And then, but before the match started, I realized no, this was actually the last match of the regular season, and playoffs are next week. So if we were to lose, this one was the match to lose. So I was like, yeah, we had a rough go of it. We had a match where a lot of things just went wrong. It happens sometimes. So, yeah. So no, we didn't bring home a victory last night, but fortunately, again, because it was not playoffs, we were not eliminated yet. So yay, still alive in all three playoffs. First round playoff, though. However, today in the two-person stick league. So I will need your good vibes again. Uh, maybe a double dose of that because, as you know, that's the league I've not been playing very well in. But overall, in a good mood. Um, and I hope you are too. All right, let's get into it. We lost a really great Canadian. Um, someone someone made I was listening. I think it was to an interview with Bob Ray. Making it very clear that this man was clearly a partisan, very much partisan. Um, but not partisan in the way that we do partisanship today. So someone who does politics in a manner that was a bit more collegial and something that uh, those of us of at least my vintage or greater who remember that time would really appreciate seeing a return to at this moment because the coarsening of our politics over the past while is not good. It is not good. It contributes absolutely nothing positive to society in any way, shape, or form. Um, but yet, a lot of people have deemed that it is effective, and therefore, well, yes. I mean, again, uh, in our current electoral system of first past the post, in which it seems that political parties have determined that it is easier to appeal to the most devoted base of your party or to the fringes of your party, in the case of the conservatives, and the party that can turn off the most people and while turning out the greatest number of their most loyal base or fringe, so reducing politics to the most devoted or fanatical, wins. Now, there's some people that want to move to proportional representation, like I said, and then there are pros and cons for that, right? Um, you don't have any what people call false majorities, so that's one thing. But then in those types of parliaments, there tend to be coalitions and coalitions that could last for a certain amount of time, and some people would argue that you end up being back essentially at the same position that you were, just with more formalized blocks that can sometimes have people come in and out of it. And once again, if you're needing to negotiate to get over the halfway point, once again, you might be making concessions to the fringe. And then there are people who believe in, I guess, a rank ballot or single transferable vote, depending on how you call that. And they see the advantage of getting people to compete for the center. If you need to compete to be everybody's second choice, you're maybe not appealing to the fringes so much. And that might change the way that we do our politics. And while you can still get, I guess, the whole concept of a false majority, those who call it that, or refer to that as it as being the case by, having less than 50% of the population vote for you, even though popular vote isn't a thing in our system, right? Because we have 343 mini elections and we elect a parliament. Um, they see that at least in every riding, you have someone that people have at least said I can live with. Um, the majority of those who voted, and you know, there's different ways to see what might be needed for the future of the nation. Um, but this person here fought for whatever it is he believed in on that subject or on any other subject, like apartheid, like um, bringing more treatment and care to people living with HIV and AIDS all around the world. He brought with that a collegiality. You weren't evil because you disagreed, and you could still be friends. And he mixed with that a capacity for oratory that was phenomenal if you had a chance to hear him speak, especially about a subject about which he was passionate, and he very rarely spoke about subjects about which he was not passionate. So, um, but he had that capacity for oratory that could move you. Um, he led by example. The Throughout the entirety of his career in public life, there was a moment of time where he was in, outright politics. He's the leader of the Ontario NDP and leader of the opposition against Bill Davis back in the day. Um, but also beyond that, right, in the world of diplomacy and multilateralism, when he was Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. And then throughout the life, the Stephen Lewis Foundation, um, which was, I think, designed specifically. Not sure if it was doing broader things, but with his mission on HIV and AIDS, he was named a special envoy by the UN on HIV and AIDS back in the days when um, uh, back in the days when there was a significant leap in the improvement that treatments could bring, and we had them here, um, but they weren't available elsewhere because they were extremely expensive. He was very, very critical in ensuring that proper care and treatment, particularly with the antiretrovirals, got to people um, who were least able to afford it around the world. Um, a lot of people say that he was, in the interviews that I've been listening to, a voice of moral clarity. And, one of the things that we say on this show is never look to politics for morality. And most people don't. But for those who do, right, the, I guess the most idealist among us, and they believe it to the core. And we need people like them. We really need people like them, especially in times like these. um, he was one of those people that people who believe in that kind of politics could look up to. And by being one of those people, even though he was partisan, right, you could look up to him, you could respect him. If he had a plan, you would still want to be in on it. he had, by being a man of integrity, by being a man of passion, by being a man of devotion, by being a man who walked his talk, um, and being a man who treated people who didn't necessarily believe the same things he did with respect, and was ready to agree on other things, if not that thing, right? The fact we didn't agree on one thing didn't close the door uh, to you on anything else, because we might not agree on this, but we might agree on something else later on down the road. And now that we've at least built this rapport while we disagreed on this, when when it comes time on something we agree, I can still pick up the phone and call you, because he conducted himself in that way and presented himself in that way, and was consistently that way. You knew what you were getting with him, right? He would be that friend who would tell you that you are messing up, right? Um, but he'd still be your friend. And yeah, uh, we could use more of that. We could use more of that. So if you're hearing a lot of effusive praise, if you're hearing um, a lot of people sharing the opinion that um, Canada may be a significantly um, lesser place as a result of having lost this one person. It is I'm not sure if you could call it eulogy, um, but it is praise that has been well earned over a very long and sustained period of time. So, while we say never look to politics for morality, if you do, look to a man like Stephen Lewis, because on that front, he was the real deal. And living proof that no, they are not all the same, right? Um, Yesterday, as you know, on the show, when we were showing the clips of Avi Lewis winning the NDP leadership, um, there was a clip at one point uh, near the end of it where he was talking about his family, he and his family's connection to the NDP, because he's third generation, right? I think it was David Lewis, his grandfather, then Stephen Lewis, and now him, at various levels, you know, um, involved in various levels, or very, but Avi Lewis is definitely like, he's got the big prize, the leadership of the federal level. His father was a leader of the opposition for the Ontario NDP. And off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you um, uh, David Lewis's involvement by all, but I know that it's like it goes back to the days of, like, I think it was the CCF, the precursor to the NDP. Um, so I mean, long lineage. And in that speech, I remember having Lewis talking about the time where, you know, one father was saying to their child, you know, um, I didn't reach the goal in my lifetime, but maybe in yours, right? And Mr. Lewis, Stephen Lewis, has been battling cancer, I think, for about 7 or 8 years. And Avi Lewis was very open about the fact that his father was in the final phase of life and was hanging on to see if he won. And apparently that did happen. Stephen Lewis did see Abby win and then passed away shortly after. Um, so yeah, it was. I heard someone in an interview talk about Stephen Lewis always having fought for the dignity of life, and kind of seems poetic um, that he got exactly what he wanted. I see a certain dignity uh, in that as well. So, what he gave to others, he got. Ultimately, he did get his wish. Um, According to the Stephen Lewis Foundation itself, they have an obituary of him. Um, this is another thing here. As I've been watching shows and listening um, to tributes, um, we see a lot of images like this. There's either two images you're going to see him in oratory, just delivering stuff with passion, and you can see it that he's feeling every word, or something like this, where he's smiling, he is happy, uh, there is joy around him. Um, for as tough as the world was and is, um, very much a happy warrior. Very much a happy warrior. Um, so here they say about him, um, it is with profound sadness that the Foundation shares the news of the passing of our co-founder, Stephen Lewis. Stephen was a respected humanitarian who spent his life championing social justice and human rights. Throughout his political and international careers, he was committed to creating a more equitable world. Quote, learned early on that the strength and resilience of communities is the road to hope, to empathy, to survival. The Stephen Lewis Foundation will never let its guard down. We know the tasks are Herculean. And then they have some video about their executive director reflecting on his legacy. And you can there's a section there where you can read more about his career. And it was a pretty fantastic career. Like I said, it's a career of achievement that would make a lot of people blush, right? Or feel like we have been taking it really easy. He's a classic overachiever here. Began his career as an NDP member of the Ontario Legislature from 1963 to 1978, during which time he became party leader and leader of the official opposition. In 1984, he was appointed across party lines as Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, where he served until 1988. Then Stephen served as UN Secretary General's Special Advisor on Africa from 1986 to 1991, and he was the Deputy Executive Director to UNICEF from 1995 to 1999. During this period, Stephen worked on several significant reports. In 1992, as the Special Advisor on Race Relations to the Premier of Ontario, he was responsible for the Stephen Lewis Report on Race Relations in Ontario. Working with UNICEF in 1993, he coordinated the Grâce Michel study, which was the first global study on the impact of armed conflict on children. Ms. Michel's report was presented to the UN General Assembly in 1996. In 1997, in addition to his work at Mr. Lewis was appointed by the Organization of African Unity, the precursor to the African Union, to a panel of eminent personalities to investigate the genocide in Rwanda. Rwanda, the Preventable Genocide, was published in June 2000. In 2001, Stephen was appointed by UN Secretary General Kofi Annan as his special envoy for HIV and AIDS in Africa. Throughout his travels, Stephen was confronted by the ravages of AIDS, overflowing medical wards, endless funerals, and village after village with people, often young women, in the throes of death. His personal connections with the people he met informed the urgency of his message to the global community, that the expertise needed to confront the pandemic resided with the communities most affected. With this in mind, in 2003, Stephen recruited his daughter, Ilana Landsberg Lewis, to create a foundation to support HIV and AIDS grassroots organizations in sub Saharan Africa. Over a kitchen table, the Stephen Lewis Foundation was born. Also, on a side note, the concept that the expertise needed to confront the pandemic resided with the communities most affected. When it comes to HIV/AIDS and the global research community, that's something that's very, very embedded in the culture. The International AIDS Conference is the largest scientific conference in the world, principally because it has a hard science wing, and then it has a community-based research wing. Anything when we're talking about harm reduction programs, how did we get a lot of this knowledge? We got a lot of this knowledge through the work on the ground back in the early days of HIV and AIDS, when we were practicing harm reduction and using those methods to try to curb the spread of the virus. And a lot of these strategies came from community-based organizations locally, working with local people that could understand epidemiology and sociology and that type of stuff, and coming up with programs. And then when they were proven to work, got scaled up and scaled up and scaled up. So the because the community played such a key role in the initial response to the virus, which led to stemming of the spread. The scientific community, the hard science community, has always recognized that contribution, and therefore that conference together brings both of those wings of research together, and that's why it's one of the largest. That's why it is the largest scientific conference in the world, and it links back directly to this concept here that Stephen Lewis was advocating. The expertise needed to confront the pandemic resided with the communities most affected. And if you ever hear of something called the JIPA principle, which is the greater involvement of people most affected, or of people affected, that's another thing. So, a lot of communities use a different version of it. In the indigenous community, nothing about us without us, for example, is a similar concept. If you're going to develop some strategies or responses for certain communities, you have to bring them in on the ground floor in the development of the response, not just develop the response and then go to that community and say, okay, now, do whatever you do, in terms of making it culturally appropriate to sell this. You bring them in at the beginning, at the design stage, that goes a little better. It takes a little longer sometimes, but then once you actually have the solution and you're going and you're putting it out to the community, it has the buy-in already, right? And that helps it gain acceptance a whole lot more rapidly. All right. Within a few short years, the foundation was raising $10 million a year from supporters, many of whom were inspired by Stephen's message and his unparalleled gift for oratory. He was brilliant and loquacious and possessed a seemingly encyclopedic list of facts and figures, but the real power behind his fiery speeches was that they came from the heart. A committed feminist, values Stephen credited his wife Michelle Landsberg with instilling. He knew gender inequality was driving the AIDS pandemic. He saw women denied treatment, women who were victims of violence, and women living with HIV who had the caretaking burden for their families and households. And while women were at the center of the community response, they were not afforded the same access to the international stage. Quote, somehow the women have been excluded from making the decisions, he said, and that's not an accident. Often those women were grandmothers. In August 2006, the SLF hosted the first grandmothers gathering in Toronto, an unprecedented meeting of 300 Canadian and African grandmothers that launched the Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign. By its 15th anniversary in 2021, the campaign had raised $40 million for community-based organizations supporting African grandmothers. Stephen was relentless in his calls for greater access to testing and treatment, increased global funding, and the political will to end the pandemic. In 2007, his determination to expose the systemic injustices underlying AIDS led him to co-found with Paula Donovan the international advocacy organization AIDS Free World. He continued demanding the world's attention on issues of global inequity, including access to vaccines and climate change. In 2021, he spoke of the determination of the foundation's partners to forge ahead in the face of COVID-19. He joyfully wrote of the recognition of by the world's aid agencies, finally, of community-based interventions. Quote, Africa knows what it takes to withstand the ferocity of contagious diseases. What we have is the triumph of community-based prevention, treatment, and care, he proudly proclaimed. And he was a key person in bringing that about. Stephen Lewis Winnion of the Order of Canada, recipient of the Pearson Peace Medal and the World Pride Human Rights Award. Among his many esteemed roles, he served as an advisory committee member to Human Rights Watch Canada, as a commissioner on the Global Commission on HIV and the Law, and he served terms on the boards of the Clinton Health Access Initiative and on the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative. He received 42 honorary doctorates from Canadian and American universities. Stephen is survived by his wife, Michelle Landsberg, their 3 children, Ilana, Avi, and Jenny, and 4 grandchildren, Zev, Yoav, Zimri, and Toma, and by his siblings, Michael Lewis, Janet Solberg, and Nina Libskind, and their families. His legacy will live on through the work of the Stephen Lewis Foundation, our staff, volunteers, supporters, and partners. We remain steadfast in continuing the work he believed in so deeply. Like I said, a fantastic human being. There is, wanted to show you, I don't know if you had an opportunity to see it on your own, but Power and Politics had interviewed David Suzuki. And they were really good friends. And near the end of the interview, David Suzuki really chokes up. You can tell that he's heartbroken here. So I'm going to present at first what CBC had prepared, because I told you that there was an interesting story about his appointment, and it's included in this prepared piece. And then we'll take a look at a couple of minutes from that interview with David Suzuki. All right. Sorry there, kids and cubs. And there you go.
With the death of Stephen Lewis, former UN ambassador and Ontario NDP leader, a man who spent his life...
Hold on. I think the back speed might be a little quickly. Yeah, it was a little too quick there.
Fighting for the disadvantaged both here in Canada and around the world. Here is a look back at his decades of public service.
I cannot expunge from my mind the heartless indifference, the criminal neglect of the last decade.
Stephen Lewis spent his life using his brilliance, his rage, his determination to fight injustice. One of Canada's great orators, he was a lifelong democratic socialist, son of federal NDP leader David Lewis.
His mother wanted him to be a concert pianist. He wanted to help people.
He joined the Ontario legislature in 1963.
We will oppose the bill throughout the afternoon.
Leading Ontario's NDP through most of the 70s. There was shock in 1984 when progressive conservative Brian Mulroney chose Lewis as ambassador to the United Nations.
This is the most remarkable thing. I wonder if you weren't even more surprised about this appointment than we were.
No, I think we share levels of flabbergastedness equally.
Using his pointed powers of persuasion.
How it was possible that things should come to such a pass in a world which regards itself as fundamentally civilized.
He may from time to time slip in an adjective we hadn't foreseen, but that has brought only honor to the country.
Mulrooney and Lewis found common purpose battling to end South African apartheid.
No more time for tears. The tears are over. We're just waiting as we sit on top of this volcano for the whole thing to blow up.
Lewis would later call that fight a moment he would forever value. The second great fight of his life.
Around the continent, hundreds of thousands of children don't have access to treatment.
In 2005, he was named UN Special Envoy on AIDS in Africa.
And we will never subdue the gruesome force of AIDS until the rights of women become paramount.
Insisting the world must do more, pained by injustices like the millions orphaned.
You're speaking to a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old child, and this kid is weeping uncontrollably as they try to describe their life.
Again, he called out global powers and, as he did throughout his life, demanded better of all of us.
Can someone, anyone, please explain to me our contemporary balance of values? Thank you.
Stephen Lewis was an early environmentalist, chairing the first international conference on climate change in 1998, which paved the way for environmental policy worldwide. Over the years, Lewis became close friends with leading Canadian environmental researcher David Suzuki. The pair met in 2001 over a shared bond for climate issues and politics. In 2019, Suzuki and Lewis traveled the country for the Climate First tour, talking about the dangers of the climate crisis. Both men were in their 80s at the time. This was Suzuki and Lewis on that tour, making a stop in Toronto. David Suzuki joins us now to share more about the life of his friend, Stephen Lewis.
All right. So we'll bring you a little more of Mr. Suzuki there as well. Don't worry. But you could see here, Stephen Lewis tapped on the shoulder by Brian Mulroney, progressive conservative, to be Canada's ambassador to the UN, approached by Bill Davis, the Liberal leader of Ontario. Would that be of interest to you? So yeah, but I mean, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of that. Again, the type of respect that you get when you leave, you do your business in such a way that you can leave the door open. He just celebrated his birthday too? Oh, yes, I'll have to look at that. Maybe I was not aware of that, Tabby G. Yeah, the interview is really beautiful. I'll play the start of it. I wasn't intending to play all of it because there's a couple of other topics I want to show, but it is a beautiful moment, I have to say.
My condolences, Mr. Suzuki. Thank you for taking the time.
I don't know if I can speak after seeing that package.
I'm very, very sorry for your loss. One thing that struck me about your friendship with this incredible man that people might not expect is you two made each other laugh a lot. I don't know that people would have thought David Suzuki and Stephen Lewis yucking it up all the time, but
it was a great part. It was a great part of his oratory. It seems to me. I mean, he always had a little jab in there that, in many ways, was very funny. I think you saw Joe Clark say, he put the occasional word in there, and he's right. He's a very, very funny man, and he was a joy to be with and to work together. I was so honored and privileged to be able to spend time with him on Saturday, just a day and a half before he died, and I just held his hand. He was kind of drifting in and out, but he said, gosh, if only we had met when we were younger, what we could have done together. And that was such a compliment for me, because to me, he was my great hero. My dad brought me up to believe that oratory was really important. My dad always said, the Japanese culture is you don't want to stand out. You got to pound down any people that want to show off or stand out. But he said in Canada, you have to be able to get up and speak. And there has been no greater orator that I've ever experienced in Canada than Stephen Lewis. But he combined his oratorical abilities with great intellect and commitment to ideals and a sense of humor. There's nothing better. And my hope is that he will last as a model for young people today, that you can stand up for your principles. You don't have to compromise them in order to gain electoral power or to get elected.
He was passionate on such a breadth of issues. Obviously, you two found common ground on climate, but I mean, I think about the work he did, for instance, trying to address the AIDS crisis, but also then fighting South African apartheid with Brian Mulroney. Being his friend, what did you come to understand about what drove him to fight so hard on all these causes?
Well, I mean, he believed in the causes that he was involved in, but I think the fact that he even got to be Canada's representative in the UN is indicative of the kind of man he was. Bill Davis was the premier while Stephen was fighting in opposition, and it was Bill Davis who asked Stephen, "Would you consider being a UN representative?" And Stephen said, "Well, sure, but Brian Mulroney has to appoint me." And Bill Davis said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of that." And to me, that was an indication that much as Stephen was effective in arguing against his opponents, there was always a respect for those people that left the door open for possibilities. And people don't know, I don't think, that Stephen got the copy of Brian's speech that he was going to give before the UN, and Stephen was appalled. He said, "This is just written by bureaucrats. There's nothing in it." So he rewrote the speech in which he came out very, very strongly against apartheid, and he sent it back to Mulroney, and Mulroney said, do you think how will this go down? Do you think it'll be accepted?" And Stephen said, "You'll get a standing ovation if you deliver this." He did, and did get a standing ovation. So there was a man, who was behind the scenes, but had a huge impact. I've always been very proud of Mulroney's stand on discrimination, on apartheid, but he was also the man that signed the apology to Japanese Canadians for what happened during the Second World War.
Well, if I can.
So, just interrupting here, right? You can see clearly, right, that there was some love there, and there was some respect and admiration. There's a deep friendship. Again, all the different ways in which Mr. Lewis is accomplished, all the ways that he went, how he carried himself. Again, just nothing but praise, right? Nothing but praise. It's like, he sounds like somebody that we don't want to know, right? So, it's hard to find the words. It's sad because obviously you lose someone great who contributed, immensely to the nation, and clearly didn't have lose any of his fire or any of his fight. So had he had the health, would still be contributing stuff and giving us either the wake up call or the pearl of wisdom that we would need at any given time. Um, and also, however, when you hear this type of tribute, um, you know, to have it confirmed that there are other ways of doing things, and not just small things, big things, right? But there's just another way to be. It doesn't have to be this harsh or coarse, right? Everyone can give a little. Everyone can recognize when someone has a good idea, that respect the good qualities in another person. Disagreement on one thing doesn't have to mean disagreement on everything. Disagreement is not treason. Just disagree, right? Um, there's a warmth, like, I'm listening, I'm seeing here in the chats, the people going, oh, and the hearts breaking, and the respect that's being shown here, uh, and even people that didn't know him as much now, says, I didn't know him, I didn't really know him, but what I'm hearing about him sounds good. He was a great person. All right, let's go back here to what Mr. Suzuki has to say here. And also the point that he was making, sorry, before we leave, before I continue here, and making the point, uh, Mr. Suzuki called him, he worked behind the scenes when you're hearing like all that other stuff. I mean, you don't necessarily think of Canadian ambassador to the United Nations as behind the scenes. That's pretty prominent title. But that, that title is big. But when you know what the job is, right? Day after day after day after day, seeing different people, and and also a lot of the same people, right? Within the diplomatic corps, your fellow ambassadors and all that kind of stuff, and working that connection and working those networks, all the conversations and all the meetings, everything. Yes, and rewriting the speech and then sending out and like this, and having the prime minister deliver it, and you're not getting that credit from that, right? You're just making all that stuff happen behind the scenes. Um, that that reminder that your contribution, when I say everybody can contribute, your contribution doesn't need to be loud or boisterous, right? There's a lot of people that help move things, move chess pieces behind the scenes, that lay the groundwork for stuff to happen, and that's just as valuable a contribution. Sometimes it's the most valuable contribution of all, because you're the one that has established the relationships on the ground to make it such that is even possible to start with. All right. Let's get back to Mr. Suzuki here.
Ask, sir, there's a lovely profile of your friendship with Stephen Lewis in the National Observer, but there's also a reference to Brian Mulroney in there, and I just want to share it. It says that Mr. Lewis and Brian Mulroney spoke just before Mulroney's death. In one of their last calls, Mulroney told Lewis he loved him. Lewis said the feeling was mutual. I wonder what you take from a man who would build such strong bonds across the political spectrum.
Well, I think that's that's a model for what the way politicians should treat each other. Your fellow politicians, you may be in different parties. What Donald Trump has done is something that is so egregious. It makes me sick to think that, if you oppose him, then you're ridiculous, and he calls you every name in the dictionary, and it's that kind of lack of respect that prevents any kind of cooperation or working together in any way. And I decry that, and I think Stephen's life is an example of how that door was always open with him. And to me, the important legacy of Stephen is that Canadians and young people see that one can navigate politics without compromising one's principles or ideals, and yet have the respect of the opponents, to listen to them and be listened to. That's the important legacy of that he had. And he knew he was dying for over 7 years, and he just struggled and struggled. And all the while during those years, it was my privilege to have worked with him. We actually toured some Canadian universities on climate together, and he was very engaged right up to the very end. And I think the great thing to me about his death was he hung on till he could see that Avi won. And then his legacy was complete, that will continue on. I kind of worried after Avi won. I thought, oh my God, Stephen's going to rally and say, I got to be out there campaigning for Avi. But I knew that he was hanging on. And again, that's an indication of what a powerful guy he was. He hung on long after everyone expected him to be gone.
I won't ask you to pick a favorite memory, but I just wonder if there's one that comes to mind about we're going to hear so much about the man, the orator, but your friend.
I just feel it was an honor and a privilege to call him a friend and to be called a friend by him. The last hour we spent together, we just held hands and told each other how much we loved each other. But his legacy is there, and we all should be so grateful for him.
I'm very grateful for you taking the time to talk to us, and I'm very sorry for your loss, David Suzuki. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
How can you not be moved by that, right? Oh my God. It's not the first time I see it, and every time it gets me. So yeah, right. Anyone not sobbing now? Kid Bucky. Oh man. But yeah, there you go. I think that captures what you need to know about the man. What a big loss it is, and what an example he set for how politics could be done in a different way. As Mr. Suzuki notes here, and as we've noted as well, he's the father of Avi Lewis, and lived long enough to see Avi Lewis win the NDP leadership. So the torch is being passed in many ways here, from a past leader to a current leader, or past leader via interim leader, I guess, and but also from one generation to another of Lewis's. He is, as I mentioned on the show yesterday. Losing someone you love is the hardest part of life. And I can't imagine as well the, knowing that it's the final days, and still choosing to be at the convention itself, and then again that's probably Stephen Abby going, like, Dad, I'm going to stay with you, and Abby's like hell you are, you're going to that convention, you're going to deliver that acceptance speech. Right. So a lot of parents are like that, right, when their kid is pursuing a dream, even in the final moments. And it's just sort of like, if there's some type of thing like that, it's like, no, you go, you do this, you worked hard for that, go. You get their blessing. So yeah, yes, indeed. Grief is the price we pay for love. I think that was Andrew Garfield on Stephen Colbert that said something like that. Indeed. Kit Saucy. It's probably hard for David Suzuki too, because he is older and has been watching his friends leave this world while he is here. Jane Goodall was another one last year. Indeed. That's true. Um, so Abby's taking the helm. It must be a kind of an interesting. I can't even imagine what the mix of feelings he must be having at this moment. Um, I mean, it's not like he wasn't prepared that this was going to happen. But I know from personal experience, no matter how much you're prepared, uh, when it hits the finality of it all, um, seems to make whatever preparation time you had. Uh, I'm not going to say makes it seem in the moment it was for nothing. Let's put it that way. Later on, maybe you realize it did help, but it just hits how it hits, right? It doesn't matter if it's telegraphed when it hits. It just hits. So yeah, yeah. Um, I'm I'm reading what you're saying in the chat at the same time, and that's why and you're making some lovely comments here. And actually, yeah, Kinona Carol, I think you've just given me the segue I needed here. If Carney can reinvent the Liberals, maybe he can do it for the NDP. As I mentioned on the show yesterday, as Mr. Lewis is taken over, there is an avenue for him, right? There's a whole field of political point of view that's not being spoken to at the moment. And given that he is a rather effective orator himself, probably has a while to go to be at the same level as his father. But he's a pretty damn good orator himself. He can paint a picture, right, with words. He's pretty effective at it. No one can say he's not passionate about what he believes. So, has a lot of common qualities. How one chooses to wield them matters. Based on his acceptance speech and many of his interviews, since he seems to be engaging or seems to be intending on engaging in politics in a similar way, despite the fact that he was immediately rebuffed by Naheed Nenshi and by Carla Beck in Saskatchewan. And I'm going to go to that note actually for you, kits and cubs, because I did put Mr. Nenshi's into the record when I was talking about it yesterday, but I didn't actually put into it what it is that the leader of the Saskatchewan NDP had to say, because you might have been hearing in some interviews since that he's reached out to her, but she doesn't particularly want to meet with him because of his stance on fossil fuels. So basically, I'm guessing she's saying that she doesn't have anything to talk to him about, I guess, until such time as that is the case. I am trying to look for a copy of the letter, which I had not too long ago. There we go. Dear Mr. Lewis, I'm writing to you today regarding you and your campaign team's outreach to arrange a meeting with me. The positions that you have taken when it comes to natural resource development are ideological and unrealistic. They would hurt Saskatchewan workers, communities, and industries. On November 20, 2025, you said you are, quote, unequivocally opposed to any new fossil fuel development, including LNG. You have doubled down on those positions in media interviews this weekend. Your approach has not only taken aim at the resources, but at the people who work in these sectors, and it ignores the realities not only in this province, but across the country. Today, there are 40,000 direct and indirect Saskatchewan jobs tied to natural resource development. There are at least 900,000 nationwide. Entire communities in Saskatchewan rely on these sectors. The policies and positions you have advocated for put at risk $13.6 billion in economic activity annually in Saskatchewan. Now, I'm going to interject here and say that in interviews, and I believe some of them that I showed, Mr. Lewis does talk about, you know, you need more than just a slogan, like just a transition. There has to be the jobs ready for them and other things in place. So, um, if she has the impression that he wants to do it in such a way as such as to abandon workers and just do a harsh approach, he's seeming to offer an olive branch that that's not what he's talking about at all. So there could be some moves, if one wanted one, from the part of Avi Lewis to say that yes, we have to get off fossil fuels or whatnot like this, but that's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, right? We have to build those jobs, whatnot, but we still have to, plan for this happening. And then because without a plan, it never happens. It just gets pushed back. If he approaches it in that way, there could be uh, some room opening on the floor for him and Mr. Nenshi and Miss Beck to dance a little politically. But he seems to want to be, to at least talk about it. She's not open to it at the moment. Hopefully, with what he's been saying in interviews, there might be a little bit of defrosting happening eventually. She goes on to say the NDP is the party of working people. It is impossible to support and respect working people without respecting the jobs they have, not the ones you think they should have. In 1949, an interprovincial pipeline was approved by the federal government, and the first stage to Regina was constructed in less than 18 months. At the time, Saskatchewan Premier Tommy Douglas declared the project a major milestone and touted the benefits of connecting our province to the energy resources in Alberta. As someone who grew up in Toronto, I'm sure you know that this pipeline network, now Enbridge Line 5, supplies the jet fuel needed to fly planes out of Pearson International Airport. The positions that you have expressed publicly in this leadership race and in your prior interactions with the New Democratic Party are antithetical to the values of a party built with and for working people. You have repeatedly claimed your laser focus on affordability. However, the policy positions you have taken don't reflect that. Our resource sectors now and moving forward are how we deliver on Tommy Douglas's dream of universal health care, good schools, and strong social supports for our most vulnerable. Moving forward, we need a plan that keeps the lights on as well as keeps the cost of power and food production low. That's exactly what the Saskatchewan NDP is delivering with the development of our grid and growth plan. We're diversifying our industries, protecting affordability, and lowering emissions. It's not an either or proposition. When you publicly reverse your position on these matters and show a willingness to try to understand the realities of our province and the tens and the thousands of proud Saskatchewan workers who rely on our industries to feed their families, I will meet with you. Sincerely, Carla Beck, leader of the official opposition. In interview, I've seen Javi Lewis saying, I don't think I'm going to change my position on this. I just ran on this, and everybody who voted for me based on this. If I was going to change my position right away, it would seem like a little disingenuous. But we don't have to agree on this to be able to agree on other things or do other big things. And again, if there is a way for him to move from keep it all in the ground now, not another new project, to some flexibility on that while we're building the industries that are going to require the people that are now working in the oil and gas industry and help them move over to them with the appropriate supports that are needed for that. There could be an opportunity there to open up some space because based on this requirement that you entirely wholesale change of view that you hold passionately and deeply, and a view that's probably not going to change. That seems like a kind of a permanent roadblock, and politics is supposed to be the art of the possible. So you have to create some space for something to be able to happen because you'll never know when you might need each other here. Um, but yeah, that's a pretty firm no from Carla Beck, and a public no from Carla Beck. Doesn't exactly provoke the warm and fuzzies. And when you add that to the one from Mr. Nenshi, who didn't, again, I'm not sure that there was any time for a call between them before Mr. Nenshi came out and said, we don't think so. Right? And Mr. Nenshi had said previously to the vote, like, don't mess this up for me. There is going to be some hurdles to get over. Mr. Lewis, however, in every interview that I'm seeing right now, has a line that, even though we can't agree, we don't agree on all of these things, I can't wait for Carla Beck to become the premier of Saskatchewan. I can't wait for Nahin Nenshi to become the premier of Alberta. These two are premiers in waiting, right? Because Albertans and the people of Saskatchewan deserve so much better than the governments that they do have at the moment, and they are the best alternative options. So yes, I can't wait for them to be leaders. We don't have to agree on everything for me to cheer for them and support them, and to do everything that I can from my end to help them to win. I'm not sure if he's gone as far as saying that third part, but that's what I kind of see here is implied. If he is ready to do that, that too could warm or make things lead to a thawing of relations. But right now, he seems to be being met with an ice cold block. These two particular premiers see him as a danger to their opportunities of becoming a premier one day because of his stance on resources and people potentially believing that Avi Lewis speaks for the provincial wings as well as the federal wing when he speaks. David Eby, of course, stating that he's looking forward to have an opportunity to meet with Avi Lewis so that they could talk about a couple of things, because even though David Eby may be not as 100% pro-resource as is needed to be in Alberta and Saskatchewan, given what contributes a lot to their economy. David Eby is still pretty supportive of LNG type products and other types of resource products, mining and things of the like, which could still run into opposition with what the federal NDP leader is saying or advocating. So while there's a little more predisposition to working it together in that he doesn't have to take a public swing or feel like he needs to take a public swing before the confetti has all landed on the floor yet. There is some potential headbutting there. And then, of course, in Manitoba Wapkanu, they have a long-standing friendship. So that makes things a little easier. But even Mr. Canoe is probably a little bit more pro-resource. He's, quite happy of the Port of Churchill being used, for example, to export oil. So, which means, he would be much more pro resource industry, of course, even though Manitoba has a lot of hydro, or is principally hydro, I think not over 95%, I believe. But yes, right, he sees the value in these other projects. So there is going to be some fence mending required there. I like to look at certain people, columnists whose opinions I tend to respect. And I because I always want to get a look at perspectives that are different than mine, and see what people see. But this is Mr. David Kleiman-Haga, who I think have a lot of respect for, Alberta-based, and says here, talking about the win, Says Abbey Lewis has decisively won the leadership of Canada's New Democratic Party. So the Greek chorus of doomsday commentators predicting the bleakest of bleak futures for the party will be cranking up the volume immediately, promising a new day for the battered parliamentary Fourth Party by advocating government that works for the many, not the money. Mr. Lewis overwhelmed his four opponents with 56% of the vote announced at the party convention in Winnipeg on this weekend. Mr. Lewis's closest rival, Edmonton Strathcona MP Heather McPherson, received 20,899 votes to his 39,734. None of the others even came close. As a result, the prevailing wisdom of the Canadian commentariat in the next weeks and months is bound to be that Mr. Lewis's election means the swift end of Canada's Social Democratic Party, because its membership elected a Social Democrat on the first ballot with 56% of their votes. It also seems that voter turnout was about 70%. So that was pretty good for a leadership race. Who could have imagined that social democrats, democratic socialists, and their ilk wouldn't want conservative policies rebranded as liberal policies from their own party as well? And who would have thought that they'd vote for an unambiguous social democrat to make that point? Aren't we all supposed to be neoliberals now, with the NDP merely representing the woke neoliberalism with a human face fringe of the narrow spectrum of economic policy positions permitted nowadays in Canadian political discourse? Apparently not. A hint of what was about to happen could have been found in the results of Jagmeet Singh's 7.5 years leading the NDP, during which the party chased away many of the Social Democrats, who were assumed to be its base by being as much like the Liberals as possible, and propping up the Liberals in Parliament when it wasn't possible through the so-called Supply and Confidence Agreement. Unlike almost all Western parties of labor, the NDP had already pushed many working-class voters into the arms of MAGA right by ignoring their aspirations and refusing to acknowledge the role of the economic policies the party supported in crushing working families. If the only reason the NDP existed was to prop up the Liberals and feel good about it, as indeed seemed to be the perception of a growing number of voters through Mr. Singh's blundering tenure, why not just vote Liberal? Back on April 28th last year, a hell of a lot of them did. Much of the lost working class, including many union members, went over to the increasingly magnified conservatives. So who says a guy who advocates state intervention to support tenants' rights, lower grocery prices, assured access to reproductive rights, fair taxes, and free post-secondary education won't do better than the branch of the party that wanted to continue Mr. Singh's approach, only more competently? Well, who knows? The NDP is in such bad shape today that it might be hard for any leader to pull the party out of the muck. But who's to say that a leader who proposes real change won't do better at keeping the NDP in play than one who wanted to remain closer to the mushy middle of Canada's political Overton window? A couple of provincial New Democrat leaders on the oil-drenched prairies kickstarted the inevitable "the party is over" trope with churlish commentaries on Mr. Lewis's victory as soon as it was known. Quote, "It is clear that the direction of the federal party under this new leader, someone who openly cheered for the defeat of the Alberta NDP government, is not in the interests of Alberta," grumped Alberta opposition leader Naheed Nemshi in a statement emailed to media at 9:25 a.m. Quote, "Last year, Alberta's New Democrats voted overwhelmingly to make membership in the federal party optional," continued Mr. Nenshi, who is clearly part of the camp who thinks the NDP should be more like Liberals. Quote, "Many thousands of our provincial members, including myself, are not members of the federal party. We are a big tent and welcome the support of people who vote for every federal party. We believe in Alberta and we believe in Canadian energy and the good jobs it creates. We believe in more pipelines and in reducing emissions. We believe in strong public services and strong jobs-driven economy to help pay for them." About the nicest thing that could be said about Mr. Nenshi's screed is that it's ill-timed and really a reaction to United Conservative Party Premier Daniel Smith's inevitable effort to tie the Alberta NDP to its federal counterpart. It has the potential, though, to turn into a spectacular own goal, driving away many in the party's traditional base. Already fed up with Mr. Nenshi's passive approach to Ms. Smith's ideologically driven misrule in the next provincial election. For her part, Ms. Smith's mid-morning reference to Mr. Lewis's victory was entirely predictable. Quote, "The UCP will never stop fighting against radical forces, including the Alberta NDP, who want to shut down our economy and keep our resources in the ground, yada yada." Saskatchewan opposition leader Carla Beck took a similar tack to Mr. Nenshi, focusing on Mr. Lewis's environmental positions in an open letter to the new national leader. Quotes from the letter that I just read. "The positions that you have expressed publicly in this leadership race and in your prior interactions with the New Democratic Party are antithetical to the values of a party built with and for working people. You have repeatedly claimed you're laser focused on affordability. However, the policy positions you have taken don't reflect that." Well, that's a position that can be defended, at least in the context of the prairie economy. Although it sure didn't help that she ended her missive by telling the new federal leader that, quote, when you publicly reverse your position on these matters and show a willingness to try to understand the realities of our province and the thousands of proud Saskatchewan workers who rely on our industries to feed their families, I will meet with you. No meeting then, I guess. The likelihood Mr. Lewis is suffering a fate like that of UK Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn in 2020 was significantly reduced during the weekend convention by the election of a slate of elected officers who support Mr. Lewis's program. Two conclusions can be drawn immediately from what happened in Winnipeg. One, financial contributions to the leadership candidates really are a good way to forecast the outcome of a party leadership vote, especially in a grassroots-driven party like the NDP. Two, the base of the national NDP remains dominated by Social Democrats, no matter what the party establishment thinks or wishes. Let's see what they have here. When he was talking about Mr. Lewis not suffering a fate like that of the UK Labour Party, I'm guessing that there were some party elections going on at the same time. According to Sid Ryan, it says here that Avi Lewis's team achieves a clean sweep of NDP executive officer positions. The NDP convention in Winnipeg witnessed a dramatic turn of events as the Avi Lewis team secured all three top elected officer positions. The team, anchored by Libby Davies, who came out of retirement to lend her expertise and decades of leadership experience, resonated with delegates through her message of mentorship. Niall Ricardo delivered a powerful speech to win the presidency, while Kira Gunn secured the secretary-treasurer position, completing the sweep. The importance of this victory cannot be underestimated, as it means the party's old guard will not be able to stymie Avi Lewis's mandate, similar to the anti-Corbyn faction efforts against the UK Labour leader. The vote also exposed the ineffectiveness of union leadership in influencing their membership to vote for the Labour slate. This development signals a seismic shift in the NDP towards a more socialist, membership-driven approach, contrasting sharply with Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre's right-wing austerity policies. It remains to be seen whether the McPherson and Ashton teams will close ranks and unite behind the new leader, from which all accounts is expected to be Avi Lewis on the first ballot. So there you go, a little internal politics as well. Let's see what else I had here. David Clemenhaga again, stating as he continues, the reaction to Avi Lewis's victory as leader of the Federal New Democratic Party was pretty much as predicted here Sunday night, with the pre-written responses by Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi and Saskatchewan NDP leader Carla Bleck setting the stage for the day's journalistic hysteria. Under new leader Avi Lewis, Federal NDP looks more communist than social democratic, Don Braid, Postmedia's Calgary Herald. Smith calls Avi Lewis a communist. New NDP leader is Nenshi's nightmare, Rick Bell, Postmedia, Calgary Sun. Communist Party, new NDP leader Lewis Bastion, Alberta, City News. Federal NDP, pretty communist, Smith on Avi Lewis, CTV News. Messieurs Braid and Bell have their moments, but both of these columns are, shall we say, somewhat overwrought. To give Alberta Premier Danielle Smith her due, she made me laugh out loud in CTV's social media clip when she offered this evidence of the federal NDP's drift towards socialism with Canadian characteristics. To paraphrase someone or other, quote, they want everyone to have a heat pump. Someone who has one, they're great. That's not a bad thing for one to want for people. Just saying. If that's not full communism, what the hell is? God knows if there's anything we do well in Alberta. It's 1950s-style red baiting from the days before red was the color of the Republican Party and the ball cap worn by Miss Smith's political hero. I expect we'll be seeing a lot more of this in the next few days, weeks, and months. The only reasonable interpretation of these outbursts, which remind one of the revival of Vladimir Lenin on The Simpsons, is that Mr. Lewis's ascension to the leadership of the NDP scares the bejeepers out of the fearless champions of the overdog in Canadian media. They must be fearful Mr. Lewis will ease the famous Overton window a few centimeters back toward the left. Why, you ask? The example of Zoran Mamdani, maybe? Who knows? Alberta's Zoran Mamdani, for those who don't know, is the new mayor of New York City, who ran also on a social Democrat platform. Alberta's longest-serving party leader, Naomi Rankin of the Communist Party of Alberta, must be looking at all the ink Mr. Lewis is getting with the political C word and thinking, what am I, chopped liver? Meanwhile, Mr. Nenshi appeared to be trying yesterday to walk back his insulting news release attacking Mr. Lewis, which was published while the new federal NDP leader was still giving his victory speech, at least a little bit. Quote, "My fight is not with Abby Lewis," he temporized on CBC's As It Happens last night. "My fight's with Daniel Smith." Well, good try. It may be too late for that, though. The point Mr. Nenshi seems to have missed was explained by author and political commentator Nora Loreto from the floor of the NDP convention in Winnipeg. Quote, describing on her Substack how Manitoba NDP Premier Wab Kinew rushed to the stage to congratulate Mr. Lewis, she went on, Kinew wasn't just on stage to demonstrate that, unlike his non-premier provincial homologues, he supports Lewis. Kinew was showing that he understands that an NDP with a left populist flank can help a red Tory like Kinew more than it will hurt him. In fact, of the four Western premiers, Western NDP leaders, one of whom is a premier, or two of whom are premiers, Mr. Kinew was the only one who showed up. The other three did not come. Neither did Claudia Schender from Nova Scotia. Actually, I don't know if Claudia Schender was there. I'd have to double check that. But of the four Western leaders, only one did show up. Mr. Nenshi and Miss Beck could learn from that strategy. Sorry, I skipped a paragraph there. By offering Lewis full support, Kinew showed the press that there is room in the NDP for disagreement while not alienating Manitobans who are frustrated with Kinew's radical centrism. Mr. Nenshi and Miss Beck could learn from that strategy, she rightly concluded. It's the most basic pro tip in politics. Don't do the opposite of what the successful popular guy is doing. Alas, some politicians can't learn. Getting back to Mr. Lewis, his victory means oddly that the federal NDP now finds itself in a position analogous to that of Alberta's United Conservative Party. The national NDP is now dominated by what was not so long ago its ideological fringe, just as the UCP under Danielle Smith is now dominated by what as recently as during former Premier Jason Kenney's leadership was the Alberta Conservative Movement's ideological fringe. At first glance, this doesn't sound like a formula for success, but as Premier Smith proves every day, the right leader can make it work. And then continues on here. United Conservative Party strategists are said to be in a panic about the possibility of the federal New Democratic Party is pondering severing ties with the Alberta NDP. Astute observers of Canadian politics say Abby Lewis has only been leader of the parliamentary Fourth Party since Sunday night, and almost everyone in the federal NDP is already sick of Mr. Nenshi, and that includes rank-and-file members in Toronto who didn't even know there was an Alberta NDP. The explanation for that is thought to be that while Toronto New Democrats hear about things the Alberta NDP says every day now and then, they figure the initials must stand for something else in Alberta because a real New Democrat would never say stuff like that. New Democrats being New Democrats, the conventional wisdom appears to be that if the former Calgary mayor who now leads the Alberta NDP had just waited until after Mr. Lewis had finished his victory speech to start complaining, they probably could have forgiven him. Now they're thinking maybe they'll have to show the party Alberta's wing some, quote, tough love. In addition, since Mr. Nenshi is already talking about breaking ties with the federal party and apparently has even been focus grouping party names, federal New Democrats may find it less embarrassing to cut Mr. Nenshi loose first. Meanwhile, UCP election strategists fear formal NDP split could mean they'd have to stop blaming Mr. Nenshi for the stuff Mr. Lewis said 15 years ago and go back to the drawing board to come up with completely new stuff that Mr. Nenshi didn't say to blame him for. The big problem for the UCP, lots of Alberta political observers agree, is that Mr. Nenshi very rarely says anything that doesn't sound as if a conservative could have said it 5 minutes ago, although his jokes are funnier than Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's. Of course, finding a new name for the Alberta NDP would be a problem since all the good ones have already been nailed down at Elections Alberta by new separatist and far-right fringe parties. If they called it the CCF, their supporters might start making donations to right-wing legal nuisances, and they're certainly not going to call it the Social Democratic Party of Alberta because that would be false advertising, said a political scientist who cannot be named because he does not exist. This is, after all, your annual albertapolitics.ca April Fool's story, and absolutely nothing in it is true except for the bit about the Alberta NDP running party names past focus groups, which Mr. Nenshi let slip to television journalist Sean Admato. Some shit you just can't make up. So I didn't have an April Fool's joke for you, but David Kleiman-Haga did. Sorry, I had to. And then one last little bit here I have for you is from Evan Scribshaw. It says here, Avi Lewis wins. What's next for the NDP? One of the more interesting debates about the NDP right now is not actually about the future, it's about the past, whether Jagmeet Singh was a failed leader whose mistakes and bad ideological placement caused April 2025's disaster, or whether he was the victim of a time and a place where no leader could have ever done much better, looms over the party. And it's the one question this leadership race has failed to answer. But it's a far more informative question for the future of the party than debates about how left the party should go. The problem for the NDP is that being left doesn't mean anything in a vacuum. It has two distinct flavors that get condensed into the label left, but are fundamentally oppositional. Social progressivism, concerned with international solidarity, queer rights, and marginalized communities, and a much more class-focused approach that keeps homophobes and homosexuals in the same tent by strenuously avoiding social policy and hammering an economic message. Bluntly, you're not going to win back Northern Ontario or non-Lower Mainland BC with the muddled message of Singh's NDP. If the NDP were a pressure group or a charity or a think tank, a thoroughly socially progressive movement designed to push the Liberals left on Palestine and poverty reduction and keep them from moving right on other key issues, I'd have a lot of time for them. But they're a political party whose success could help the Conservatives, so it's clear that this matters to our politics. And there's no clear answer to what they think. In picking Avi Lewis, they've suggested that they think they've erred in being too moderate, but nowhere does that show an actual path forward. Click through the seats the NDP won in 2021 or even to the 2006 or 2008 coalitions, and you see the breadth of the NDP's collapse. This was not an unlucky election where the party lost many close races in a narrow fashion. It's fairly inarguable that based on the 2025 results, the party got lucky in close races, winning both Vancouver Kingsway and Nunavut by less than a point. Not that New Democrats will find comfort in Nunavut right now, I suppose. But look at the seats in downtown Toronto and Ottawa that the provincial NDP hold, and they're nowhere. Joel Harden won Ottawa Centre twice for the Ontario NDP, but he couldn't break 20% against an incumbent he'd already beaten in 2018. There are Ontario NDP seats in Toronto where the feds couldn't break 15%, like Spadina, Toronto Centre, Danforth, and University Rosedale. In St. Paul's, where the Ontario NDP only narrowly lost to provincial incumbent in February 2025, their federal cousins got 3.5%. Butila Karpoch and Karine Bardesi ran against each other in 2022 provincially and 2025 federally in Parkdale, and both times the victor won by 30%. Let's be clear, a popular incumbent New Democrat couldn't come within 32% of winning the most friendly Toronto seat for the NDP. This map is devoid of the kinds of targets you'd think an Avi Lewis party would be looking for. Peter Julian's chances of coming back into Parliament are better now, and Carney's momentum out west might make Griesbach and Transcona flippable. But even with those three gains, you're only at a national 8 seats after Nunavut's floor crossing and the Liberals flip Bulgis's seat in the inevitable by-election. Maybe Avi can find some magic in Hamilton Centre where the party's in third, but with some McMaster students who probably care about Palestine. Maybe? What seems likely to happen is the NDP getting screwed on the altar of first past the post. Avi will likely consolidate some progressives in safe urban seats who can freely vote their lefty conscience because Carney's failed in some nebulous way, and the NDP will lose Victoria by 19%, not 29%. That is not worth much in this electoral system. If the NDP wants party status, they need 4 more seats that I've laid out, and that's London and Windsor and Skeena and Powell River. Those 4 seats are incongruous with Lewis's appeal. Places where criticizing Carney for dropping the mantle of us having a capital F feminist foreign policy will be met very differently than in Kingsway or Winnipeg Centre. It seems fairly likely the NDP will gain a non-trivial amount of votes, get 6 to 8 seats again, and complain a lot about electoral reform in a Carney majority parliament. The problem with his leadership, or more honestly, the discourse around it, is that Avi will be a linchpin for what the party needs to do to save itself in a way that's unfair both to the party and to Avi. I'll be clear, I have no love for Avi and generally despise his brand of politics, but he is inheriting a party that is completely and utterly screwed. The decision to let Jagmeet fight the 2025 election is a massive crisis, and just because the New Democrats have decided to pretend that Jagmeet didn't deserve his fate doesn't make the situation Avi is facing any easier. His goal will be to get to party status, but he's doing so from a national 5 seats with a party that's millions in debt on a map devoid of good targets, with an issue set where Avi's main priority, climate, is irrelevant. This is a horrible situation for him to take over in, and any idea that a more moderate leader would find it easier is wish casting. The problem with Rob Ashton's and Heather McPherson's campaigns is that they sucked. In theory, the best case scenario of Ashton is the NDP's best candidate, a union leader who can put the social issues aside and build an economic message that can play with students and retail workers in Toronto as much as it can with fishers and laborers in traditionally NDP seats in rural and regional parts of Canada. The problem is, he is not this mythical being, but a flawed candidate who campaigned against AI and then used it to answer a Reddit AMA. Heather's campaign was so boring as to be non existent, and her lack of interesting ideas doesn't fill anyone with confidence she would have had the boldness to capture any attention if she won. That all said, Avi is not a perfect representative of a bold progressive start either. Avi's not AOC and he's not Zoran. Both of them represented ideological positions left of their respective opponents, but they also represented a generational change and a fresh start. Avi's not that. He's an activist with a long-standing record that can and will be used against him. He's been an asshole to Shannon Phillips and the Alberta NDP. He was driving a force behind the 2016 convention vote on the LEAP manifesto that sabotaged the Notley government, and was an anchor around the party, and his maximalist views on politics have earned him about as much goodwill with Western New Democrats, the people who actually somewhat are electorally successful, as I had with those who were Team Trudeau in December 2024. He doesn't represent generational change given he's 58, nor can he credibly claim being anti-establishment given he's the third person in his family in line to lead the NDP either federally or in Ontario. Is Avi going to be a party-destroying fiasco? Probably not, but he's not their savior either. The NDP screwed themselves by giving Jagmeet a third election when he didn't deserve it. Everything is downstream of that, and that's the NDP's structural problem. They let it get so bad there's not much they can do to fix it but wait and hope. Will it work? Almost assuredly not. But that's not really Avi's fault, as much as some will want to pretend it is. So there you go. That's Evan Scrimshaw's take on the situation. Yesterday, we were talking about politicians behaving badly. There were two I didn't have time for. The first one is a gentleman named Ken Cheveldayoff, who's the Minister of Advanced Education in Saskatchewan. Seems he made a couple of decisions that may have not been most judicious. And used his Saskatoon office in a very interesting way.
The Minister of Advanced Education is defending his rental history after the details of his constituency office were called into question. Hallie Mandrick has the details.
This office has become a point of controversy among Saskatchewan's elected officials. Since 2010, the building has been a taxpayer-funded constituency office for Ken Cheveldayoff, the Minister of Advanced Education.
A lawyer approached me about sharing the office. I contacted the Ledge Assembly. I said we're going to split things 50-50. It's going to be a split lease. And later on, they said that subleases weren't allowed. I said, well, mine's not really a sublease. They're not subbing from me. They're splitting it.
It was previously shared with a law firm which had a history of donating to the Saskatchewan Party. At the time of entering into what Cheveldayoff described as a split lease, there were no legislative rules against subletting or renting out constituency offices. This changed in 2016 when an update to the rules banned agreements of the sort. A recently published CBC article alleges that Cheveldayoff improperly subletted the space to the law firm after receiving a warning from the Speaker of the House in 2024.
Cheveldayoff was warned multiple times that he was indeed in breach of the rules, but continued nonetheless. Bottom line is this: Saskatchewan people expect their elected officials not only to have rules, but to follow those rules.
Cheveldayoff argues this is not the case. He says, at the advice of the Speaker, he entered into a new lease agreement in 2024, which corresponded with the closure of the law office in November of 2024, going on to say that these financial records are all publicly available.
Every month, half the bills were paid by myself and half by the other party. And again, every month I thought that it was a good deal for taxpayers.
Cheveldayoff added that he plans to find a new office in the near future, citing that since becoming the sole occupant of the building, it's more space than what's necessary. Hallie Mandrick, CTV News, Saskatoon.
All right. So there you go. A little bit of some questions being asked over there. And the last one I had, because I like to save the best for last, involves the person whose birthday it is today, Danielle Smith. It seems that Well, there's been some questions about some of her recent travel, uh, particularly to Saudi Arabia. And as a result of that, there was a story that emerged about a gift that she received beyond staying in seven-star hotels and luxury jet liners and stuff. According to Lisa Johnston of the Canadian Press, the mystery of a gold colored cat perched in the office of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is now a full on hissing match. It began in the House last week when opposition NDP leader Naheed Nenshi publicly accused Smith of questionable judgment for accepting lavish gifts from foreign leaders, including a giant gold cat. I'm thinking of Dame Shirley Bassey. Gold kitty. Na, 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 na. Here we have a little clip of Mr. Nenshi making the revelation on the floor of the legislature here. All right. Is it showing? It is not showing for some reason. Let's try that again. Okay, now it is. Interesting.
Alberta taxpayers spent $65,000 so that the Premier could accept hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than a house, from a foreign government.
That's right.
This was not hockey tickets. It wasn't even luxury watches as gifts. It would be, if true, the largest kickback any politician in Canadian history has ever received, worth more than a house in Alberta. And of course, this doesn't include other undisclosed gifts from foreign governments, including a giant golden cat. Will the Premier disclose all gifts she has received from foreign governments?
Premier.
Well, yes, Mr. Speaker. Whenever we have any kind of protocol exchange, I always report that to the Ethics Commissioner, and then the Ethics Commissioner indicates whether or not we have to receive it on behalf of the Government of Alberta, whether we have to disclose this. We have very clear rules about that, Mr. Speaker. The disclosures, I've had my meeting this year with the Ethics Commissioner. This particular trip, we had a number of exchanges with him in advance so that he understood that we were doing the kind of trip that we often do in Alberta in hosting people to see our oil sands. And he signed off on the trip, Mr. Speaker. That's the reason why it was disclosed. It was disclosed in the appropriate way to the appropriate entity.
Honourable member.
But of course, this government has removed the need for public disclosure, or it seems disclosure to her own caucus.
So there you go. The question is, will you disclose the list of gifts that you had? And she did not say yes to that. She just explained that there's a process when you get a gift. Not making it clear whether or not that was a gift that she had to accept on behalf of the Government of Alberta, if it was over a certain value, or that was a gift she was deemed that she could keep. But yes, and of course talks about, oh, like it's completely reasonable and we have rules for this, like she does all the time, while not actually answering the question. A statue of a gold-colored feline cat can be seen in the background of a picture sent out by Smith's office on social media, and it has since become a popular internet meme, with the critter even hopping up on Smith's lap to be petted in one false manufactured video. And here, kits and cubs, if you would want to take a look here. Nope. Keep doing it the wrong way. There we go. If you look at this picture right here, is a gold kitty. It's a pretty big statue. That seems like a lot of gold. Seems like a lot of gold. Danielle likes gold. Oh boy. Yeah. Smith's chief of staff, Rob Anderson, has since weighed in on the social media to say the infamous cat is made of copper, not gold, and is, in his words, quote, worth a few $100. Anderson says the cat was a gift given to the province during a visit from Saudi Arabia's energy minister in 2023 and is on display in the premier's Calgary office. Anderson says Nenchi's criticism just shows he's not fit. Dismisses those who think there's anything lavish or untoward about the cat statue as conspiracy-loving tinfoil hat wearers. Specifically, Mr. Anderson says, to all those Nenchi followers who buy your tin foil in bulk, here are the facts around your latest conspiracy theory about the now infamous cat sculpture. 1. The cat sculpture is worth a few $100s and is made of copper, not gold. 2. It was gifted to the people of Alberta by the Energy Minister of Saudi Arabia, who was attending the World Petroleum Conference in Calgary in 2023. 3. It was not a personal gift to the Premier and is being displayed at the McDougall Centre Premier's office out of respect for a country we are developing an important and growing trading relationship with. Okay, so apparently it's not a personal gift to the Premier. Of course, we'd have to believe Mr. Anderson. As Nenchi doesn't understand, because he never has, nor will he ever be Premier, the exchange of gifts with foreign dignitaries is a regular part of international diplomacy as a gesture of friendship, economic partnership, and peaceful relations. Nenchi's disrespect for foreign trading partners is yet more proof of his complete unfitness to lead, and I want to express my unwavering support for his continued leadership of the Alberta NDP. Oh, meow. Another saucer of milk, Mr. Anderson? How about some meow mix to go with that? Yeah. So, yeah. Pardon me, excuse me, kids and cubs, I have to sneeze. Well, there we go. Sorry. So yeah. Not sure what the deal is with the cat and whether or not it's going to be a bigger problem for Danielle Smith. It could very it is indeed true that there's this type of exchange in gifts and diplomacy. So that's, it could very well be, I guess, that it is a cat made of copper and it just has some gold paint on it or something of the sort, rather than the full golden cat. Right. I guess some of the stuff we won't know. There is the disclosure to the ethics commissioner. Apparently, these disclosures are not made public, are not rendered public anymore. But apparently, it has been all cleared, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll see if there's anything more about that. But according to David Kleiman-Haga about this, he says, fairness requires that I inform readers that Alberta's United Conservative Party government has now come up with official talking points about that controversial golden putty tat said to have been bestowed upon Premier Danielle Smith by a member of the Saudi Arabian royal family. Alert readers will recall that during question period in the Alberta legislature last Thursday, NDP opposition leader Naheed Nenshi referred to the controversial statue of the regal feline as, quote, a giant golden cat, and wondered why the Premier hadn't declared that gift and others as required of Alberta's politicians. Monday evening, quote, the Premier's chief of staff responded on the social media site previously known as Twitter, rather harshly as he's inclined to do. Quote, to all those Nenchi followers who buy your tinfoil in bulk, here are the facts around your latest conspiracy theory about the now infamous cat sculpture. First and most important, he said in his 4-point tweet, the cat sculpture is worth a few $100s and is made of copper, not gold. Some response to that point expressed a certain amount of skepticism that a Saudi prince would be so cheap as to present a keepsake made of mere copper. I would remind such skeptics that copper is practically a precious metal nowadays, exactly, as the operators of Edmonton and Calgary's electrical systems are sure to confirm. Quote, it was gifted to the people of Alberta by the Energy Minister of Saudi Arabia, who was attending the World Petroleum Conference in Calgary in 2023, Mr. Anderson went on. So that answers one of the questions asked in my last post. Since it was given to the people of Alberta, I can see no reason why it couldn't have been made of gold. Indeed, I would suggest it took a certain amount of brass on the part of the Saudis not to come up with something more precious than recycled electrical wiring. I mean no disrespect when I say this. After all, as Mr. Anderson pointed out, it is, quote, only displayed in the McDougall Center out of respect of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Somewhat rudely, he accused Mr. Nenshi of having insufficient respect for the gift giver, as Nenshi doesn't understand because he never has nor will he ever be premier. The exchange of gifts with foreign dignitaries is a regular part of international diplomacy as a gesture of friendship, economic partnership, and peaceful relations, Mr. Anderson grumped. So there you have it, people. The matter is settled. There's nothing to see here, so please move along. Anyway, Miss Smith is not available. She's in Texas telling Albertans' energy story on the global stage and doubtless hobnobbing with Republican politicians. Keep your eye on social media for confirmation. ah, golden puddy tats. There you go. Potentially accepting not okay gift, and then again could be could be on the up and up. But it doesn't. The optics don't look good, especially when you've accepted a free trip. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, word of mouth is priceless, and sharing is caring. So when you share our content with your followers, with a little note from yourself stating why it is that our content has resonated with you, that is something for which we are very grateful. It's advertising that we cannot buy. And we thank you so much for helping us in that way. It means the world to us. As well, kits and cubs, if you would like to help us in other ways, you can buy here. You can scan this QR code that's going to appear. And that will bring you to our YouTube page if you're not already there. And while you're there, you can click on our buttons, like, share, and of course, subscribe. I'm not sure if Mr. Grizzly has made another advertising push, but we seem to be growing in subscribers a little bit. We're now at 29,100, which is good. So hopefully we can get to 30,000 before the end of the month. That would be fantastic if we do have a push going on, that is. But please tell your friends and tell your family. And if you are watching on our YouTube channel right now and haven't pressed on subscribe yet, could you please do so? Because that helps us with the algorithm and it makes it such that people can find us. And we always appreciate that. The more people that know about us, the better, hopefully. Kids and cubs, if you would like to help us in other ways, you can scan this QR code, which will bring you to our tip jar, affectionately known as the Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can contribute a few loonies or toonies to help keep your favorite beaver nice and moist. Because a moist beaver is always a very, very, very happy beaver. So if you would like to keep your beaver happy, maybe a little bit of hot chocolate could do the trick. Add a beaver. You've done a good job today. A couple of toonies in there, and boom, hot chocolate, which helps me prepare the next show. So it's a virtuous cycle. The more hot chocolate I get, the better the next show is. See, it's just science. So if you would like to help, we would be very grateful. When you donate via our coffee application, we get 95 to 97% of your donation. You can also donate via Super Chat and buy our memberships on YouTube. We get about 70% of your donation there. And of course, kits and cubs, if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address if you donate to us, but through a bank transfer, because it goes from one Canadian institution to another. There are no service fees, and we get 100% of your donation. We thank you for your generous contribution, your enthusiastic expressions of encouragement, no matter how it is that you donate. We are very, very grateful that you believe in us and what we do enough to contribute to keep us going. So thank you. Um, let's see. What else do we have? Oh, because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs. On the 12th, of course, is going to be the announcement of who is the new leader of the CAQ in Quebec, Coalition Avenir Québec. So if you are registered as a member, please make sure that you get your votes in on time as we're getting close to the date. April 13th now. So 12 days to go before by-election night in Canada, and perhaps the day that Prime Minister Mark Carney finds out that he has either a technical majority or a working majority. On that, there has been some talk in the news about the Prime Minister stating that he will not prorogue Parliament in order to continue his business should he win those by-elections. And at first, that was striking me as a little odd because, that's how you get the majority on the committees. And but it seems that there might be another way. There was a little bit more that we learned about civics by reading an article in the Canadian Press, and this is by Kyle Duggan here. It says here that Prime Minister Mark Carney insisted Tuesday he has absolutely not considered proroguing Parliament in the event he wins a majority in a series of upcoming by-elections. When reporters quizzed the Prime Minister at a news conference in Wakefield, Quebec, about whether he was considering proroguing to resit the parliamentary agenda, Carney said the idea had never entered his mind. Quote, "It has never entered my thinking, the possibility of that," Carney replied. "I couldn't have been more surprised to see the suggestion that was under consideration at all." The Globe and Mail newspaper, citing confidential Liberal sources, reported the Carney government is considering proroguing Parliament if the Liberals sweep a set of by-elections in 2 weeks' time. 3 by-elections are set for April 13th, and the outcome could give the Carney government a narrow majority government. Philippe Bolduc of the consultancy Wellington Advocacy is a procedural expert who was once chief of staff to former Conservative House Leader Gérard Deltel. He says he does not believe Carney has not considered proroguing. When you're considering how to manage the House of Commons, all these options come up, so of course he's thought about it. He suggested Carney may be trying to distance himself from a term that became a dirty word in Canadian politics after a major parliamentary dispute in 2008, when the opposition attacked the Conservative government at the time for proroguing and avoiding a confidence vote. Nelson Weisman, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at University of Toronto, said proroguing now seems like a stupid idea that would allow Carney's opponents to paint him as an opportunist, making a power play. He said he's mystified by the idea that any Liberal would float the idea. Prorogation got a lot of attention back in 2008 because of the constitutional crisis. Now Canadians are quite familiar with the term. Before that, nobody really talked about it. It was never an issue of contention. Proroguing would be seen and painted as political maneuver. Wiseman added that Carney can already govern effectively, almost as if he had a majority, since none of the other parties in the House want an election right now. Bolduc said proroguing would not help the governing Liberals anyway, because while it would reset the legislative agenda, it would still leave committees dominated by opposition MPs. To change the composition of committees, the Liberals would need to change the House of Commons standing orders through a majority vote in the House, and for that, they need to sweep all 3 by-elections. If they don't have that 173 seats, they would shoot themselves in the foot by proroguing, Bolduc said. They would be starting back at zero on the progress they've made so far on some of the bills that are important to them. But if the Liberals hit a 173-seat majority in the House of Commons of 343 MPs, they likely would no longer need to prorogue, he added. 2 of the by-elections are being held in the Liberal strongholds in the Toronto area, while the third is in Terrebonne, a Quebec riding north of Montreal, hotly contested by the Bloc Québécois. If the Liberals only manage to hold the 2 seats, they'll have 172 MPs. In that scenario, the House Speaker, Liberal MP Francis Scarpaleggia, could vote in a tiebreaker to pass motions, but only under certain conditions. That means the Liberals need to win the seat in Terrebonne to clinch the extra vote they would need to effectively govern with a majority. Despite what some people say, this has actually been a rather productive parliament for minority, Bolduc added. Carney said Tuesday his government is looking to work with the other parties in the House of Commons to advance its legislative agenda. We are absolutely focused on working with Parliament, getting legislation through Parliament, adjusting legislation where it needs to be, where it's better informed by the discussions in Parliament, where we have to make a compromise in order to do it, the Prime Minister said. We've shown that consistently, and I think what we've seen, certainly in the last 2 months, is the real progress that we're making across a range of bills in crime, the Budget Implementation Act, other aspects. So there's no question of that. When asked about the possibility of prorogation, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said, quote, "It's time for the Carney Liberals to get to work and start achieving the results that he promised in people's everyday lives," which is rich from him, given that he's been distracted by his own party leadership and his own by-election. But everybody else needs to get back to work, of course. The by-elections were called after former MP Bill Blair stepped down to become Canada's High Commissioner to the UK, and after Chrystia Freeland left for roles outside the country, and the Supreme Court of Canada invalidated last year's election result from Terrebonne. So yeah, it seems that with 173, they can just change the composition of committees by making a change to standing order papers. So therefore, no need to prorogue, and thus bolstering our theory, our hypothesis that Mark Carney just wants to get the work done because, again, if you did prorogue and have to have a new speech from the throne, all that kind of stuff, everything on the order paper would die and would have to be reintroduced, or bills would have to be written and go through voting again as first vote and all that kind of stuff. So he definitely doesn't want to slow himself down that way. So yeah, there you go. We learn a little bit of civics as well. So that is on April 13th, by-election day, April 3rd to 6th. You can go vote at any Elections Canada office, at any polling station, early voting, and up until the 7th, of course, to any Elections Canada office, and you have to order your ballots by the 7th, of course. And then, of course, in May, sometime in May, there will be the vote for the BC Conservative Party leadership. Also, House of Commons petition E7148. We are at 41,820 signatures, I believe it is. This is the one that calls upon the House to make it such that party leaders have to get their security clearance. Please, if you would, sign it and circulate it. Where's the wisdom, kids and cubs? Don't really have much for you today, other than sometimes a nice cup of tea will hit the spot. There you go. Could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now at the count of 3, may I please all have you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Whoops. Yes, I heard you. There it is. And since you asked so nicely, here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
It seemed Stephen Lewis could always find the right words. Words animated the man and his lifelong passion for social justice.
Has the world gone mad? Why is it possible that human lives, African lives, are so expendable?
Lewis was a natural orator. As a college student, he debated Senator John F. Kennedy when the future U.S. president came to the University of Toronto. He was the son of another great speaker, David Lewis, an architect of Canada's new Democratic Party. Like his dad, Stephen joined the fledgling NDP and led the Ontario wing to official opposition. His socialist politics would come to define his view of the world.
My father always conveyed to me that one is put on this planet to improve the human condition.
But Lewis wanted more than politics, and who should offer him the opportunity but a prime minister of a completely different stripe? Conservative Brian Mulroney made this social democrat Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. Lewis joked about his early miscues at the UN.
Obviously thinking, what lunatic have they dispatched to this place?
But it was a turning point in his life. Lewis, Mulroney, and Canada helped mobilize international pressure to end apartheid and the racist regime in South Africa. Nelson Mandela was forever grateful to this country. As Lewis became a towering figure, many in his old party urged him to take over the federal New Democrats after Ed Broadbent retired.
No matter how much I contemplate the prospect, I simply cannot cross the Rubicon.
It would be his son, Avi Lewis, who would pick up the political torch, just this week becoming the 9th elected leader of the federal NDP.
Fighting alongside social movements, showing up where we are needed,
And sounding like a chip off the old block. In a statement, the family said Stephen Lewis had been battling cancer with the same indomitable energy he brought to his lifelong work, the unending struggle for justice and dignity for every human life. Lewis devoted much of his life after politics to where he believed it was needed most, becoming the UN Special Envoy on HIV/AIDS in Africa. He began a foundation that raised millions of dollars for projects across Africa that saved countless lives. He never spoke of himself in reverential terms, but was effusive towards those who helped others, like NDP leader Jack Layton after his passing.
He wanted, in the simplest and most visceral terms, a more generous Canada.
Stephen Lewis could think of no greater calling than to lift others and make the world a better place. It seems